Mexicans, they are primitive. They are primitive.
Our native criminals. I'd love to deport our native criminals. We have no choice. There's no reason for us to be bringing in other countries' criminals, in addition to the fact that, yes, child rape, honor killings, clitorectomies, haven't seen a lot of that in Anglo-America. It is primitive culture, and I guess we also know that this is an audience that does support clitorectomies, honor killings, and child rape.
No, and we don't ascribe it to so-called primitive cultures coming from a certain ethnicity like you do. For example, the example I was going to use was we just covered on the Young Turks about a week or so ago, 2 weeks ago, a guy who had raped a 2-year-old, and it was his girlfriend's daughter, and he was a white guy, and you would have said, why didn't they mention that he was white? He was so white when he did that rape.
I am quite sure the media reported that, and I'm not saying I don't notice any of my side of the room booing you for mentioning that. We don't have this ethnic thing.
And I guess you're not getting
I must have to defend Jeffrey Dahmer because he's white. Don't punish him. But gosh, a lot of people are upset when I talk about Mexican child rapists and Muslim honor killing and Muslim clitorectomies. Oh, no, we must defend them. White people don't do that.
Hold on. And apparently you're not getting it. So let me be a little clearer. Because no one in this room thinks that that guy did the rape because he was white. Okay? And no one thinks that the couple of Latinos that you chose to demonize, not those particular guys, what they did was horrific, did it because they were Latinos or they were Mexican nationals. Only you think that because what you want to do, unlike the rest of us, is say, it's the Latinos. It's the brown people. Watch out for them. They're rapists. They're criminals. That's literally what you said, right? And that's what we're here to stop.
No. What I'm saying is, what you just studiously are ignoring is, it is the immigrants, i.e. people who do not have a right to be here. Again, we can't do anything about our native-born criminals. We can't do anything about our native-born poor. I'd love to deport them. And no, it isn't the brown people, because the things I'm talking about, honor killings, clitorectomies, child rape, no, you don't see this among American blacks, you don't see it among American whites. We have our own country, native family. We know what our crimes are like. We are bringing in extremely peasant cultures with things we have never seen before, and it's being hidden from us. And it isn't just the occasional Jeffrey Dahmer. Look at the LA Most Wanted list. It is one Mexican or Hispanic name after another, and heavily child rape. I mean, there's no question that we're bringing in cultures where child rape is much more common, and this is being hidden from us.
All right, so in one side of your mouth,
there shouldn't be any.
And so again, in an effort at clarity, at one side of your mouth you say, no, it's just an immigration problem, and so I'm talking about people who are here illegally. And then you turn around and say it's one...
Not illegally.
And you say it's one Hispanic name after another. It's a culture, you just said a peasant culture, by the way, if you didn't hear it. So you talk about, and then I mentioned Brown, you said, no, it's not about Brown. So let me quote you again. The people coming in aren't the ones exalting the browning of America. It's smug liberals who want America to be humbled and destroyed. So does that mean you're against the browning of America?
Oh, for Pete's sake, you worked at MSNBC every night. They're celebrating the browning of America. That's not my phrase. It's liberals constantly,
I've never heard a liberal say that.
Oh,
never, not once. I've never heard a liberal like, yeah, let's brown America.
Yeah, Google it right now, the browning of America. Liberals have been gloating about this. I'm quoting them. And it's not illegal immigration, it is immigration. The point of saying it is immigration is, again, to say these are people who have no right to be here. There are way too many immigrants who are criminals. There shouldn't be any. Way too many, shouldn't be any. See, it rhymes. It's easy to remember here. And I really am not getting this anger at describing clitorectomies as peasant culture. No, you're right. That's part of the advanced culture.
You're right. That's
That's what
every
we're
single person in this room.
A developed nation with clitorectomies, honor killings, and child rape.
No, you see, it's now. Let me explain to the audience the incredibly simplistic rhetorical trick she's using. Okay, so she says, "Oh, Latinos have a peasant culture. They're all coming in here and doing child rape." And then, well, you can say, "Boo! Why are you against clitorectomies? I mean, or why are you for clitorectomies?" No, that is one of the things that you mentioned. That's not what they're going at. Okay? No, I am telling. Hold on. And then the same rhetorical trick. So, hey, and maybe we shouldn't drop a nuke that'll kill 1 million innocent people in Iraq. Why are you for Saddam Hussein?
I don't think that is an accurate summary. I mean, maybe you guys don't read, but with these unaccompanied children, we had, hundreds of these centers being reported they've never seen a flush toilet before. It is simply a fact we are bringing in peasant cultures. It is simply a fact
let's focus on that.
What kind of culture does have a clitorectomy? What kind? Yes, primitive cultures. The reason, I'm not saying it is brown people who are peasant cultures. The Democrats want the votes, and the rich want the cheap labor and the cheap maids, and you people are cheering on the plutocrats with their cheap maids driving down the wages of Americans. I just don't see why we can't care about Americans first. We have our own poor people, and they're the ones who are living next door to the peasant cultures, engaging in things like child rape. I mean, it's not George Soros or Warren Buffett's children who are going to have to worry about being raped by a peasant culture that's been brought in here. It's all being dumped on the middle class, the lower class in America, and that includes immigrants who went to a lot of trouble to escape the peasant cultures they were living in because they wanted to live in America. And if we don't cut off bringing in millions and millions of these very backwards cultures, we're not going to have America anymore. Not the America that people struggle to come to. For some reason they came here, they didn't go to Honduras, they didn't go to Bangladesh, they didn't go to Indonesia, they wanted to live in America. I wanted to live in America. Can't we please save America?
Okay. This is wonderful, wonderful. I had hoped to achieve some level of clarity, and I believe we are on that road. Okay. So, every time Ann Coulter attends a CPAC conference, every time she's invited on by a Republican politician, and then you wonder why Latinos and Mexicans might not vote for Republicans or conservatives, as she repeats over and over again, about a dozen times so far, you people come from a peasant culture. You know, when you're peasant maids and all the things.
I didn't say that.
You didn't say peasant culture? Is that right? I think some people have their iPhones out.
I didn't say you people come from a peasant
culture. She didn't say you people. She didn't say you people. She said you peasants.
If it's the same, if you're like paraphrasing accurately, if it's the same, just use my words.
Okay. Believe me, your words are now all over the internet.
Go with mine.
Okay. So now you have lamented, even though you claim it's liberals who say Browning, never once said by any liberal. I've seen you quoted 3 times. I have seen you quoted at least 3 times lamenting the Browning of America. How would you like to unbrown us? Would you kick some brown folks in the country out? Would you want to just celebrate whiteness more? What would you like to do as you lament the brownness of the country?
Immigration is a policy we don't have to have. Any government policy ought to be used to serve the people already living here, all the people already living here. That is not the way our immigration policy is being used. It is being used, and I really don't understand whatever side of the spectrum you're on. Unless you are a billionaire who really needs a lot of cheap labor, immigration is a net loss to you. This is what is driving income inequality in this country. This is what is...
No, it's not the bankers. No. It's not the tax cuts for the rich that she pushes. It's not the tax cuts, and And it's not all the billions of trillions of dollars given to the bankers. That's not pushing income inequality. It's the most powerless people in the country that have somehow captured the power and are driving income inequality by being so poor.
They are powerless, which is why these bankers and the powerful are bringing in immigrants to compete for their housekeeper's job, not for their job. How about we bring in immigrants?
Yeah, it's the maids that are so powerful in this country and creating income inequality.
That's exactly what I'm saying. They have no.
I know, that is exactly what you're saying. And it's amazing to me that you don't see how preposterous it sounds. Like, oh, the maids, what they've done to this country. Cleaning here and there.
Do you need me here for this? Because I think you're just going to mischaracterize everything I say and I'll be halfway through it. Look, it is the poorest who have
I like that this again down to 3 to 4 people club.
I'm getting it down to 3 or 4 words out. It is the poorest people who are having immigrants come in to compete for their jobs. They are not competing for the bankers' jobs. They are making sure that the bankers have very cheap nannies, maids, pool boys, drivers. Meanwhile, all jobs are being outsourced so that the rich can become even richer. But we have our own poor people, we have our own middle class people. They're the ones, I think, an immigration policy should be geared to helping. And you're not helping people by pretending the laws of supply and demand don't work when it comes to bringing in workers who are going to compete only with our poorest Americans. Actually, it's moving up into our middle class Americans with the H-1B visas and all of the computer programmers who their jobs are being taken too. No, it's the very rich who are benefiting from this dump of cheap labor on the country that also happens to be changing the culture. And their maids aren't living in their neighborhoods. Okay. You know, they're coming in from the suburbs. They're not seeing what's happening, how the country is changing, and how people are suffering. I say we have an immigration moratorium until our unemployment rate is 0. When it's 0, then we can bring in more workers to compete with America.
In other words, fight amongst yourselves while Ann and the Republicans push for more tax cuts for the same people creating income inequality. Okay.
I think I'm perfectly capable of speaking for myself, and instead of eventually letting me answer, and then saying, in other words, you people suck is what she's saying. I think they heard what I said.
I know that. I love it. I couldn't possibly do more damage to you than you.
It's nothing too effective because you then have to mischaracterize it in other words.
Do you want tax cuts for the rich? Then speak for yourself. No, speak for yourself. Do you want tax cuts for the rich?
You ask the question and I won't
Do you want tax cuts for the rich? Do you want tax cuts for the rich? Do you want further tax cuts?
No, I love Trump's tax plan. And where's Hillary? Where's Chuck Schumer? She's been sitting on the finance committee. They represent New York. Trump is showing how both political parties are controlled by the plutocrats, and that no one has come forward all this time to say George Soros and Warren Buffett should pay as much as the middle class does. Donald Trump to say.
All right, look, again, Politicon working. Trump's tax plan has enormous problems and is giant giveaways for the rich, but she is right that on hedge funds, private equity guys, if you'd like to raise their taxes, we're going to get a deal. I would love to do that.
Why hasn't the Republican or especially Democratic Party, which is really beholden to the left on this, they're the ones who get the Wall Street money. Obama got more than anybody else.
In 2008, that was when he got.
Ever touched this until now?
Okay, so look, I'll tell you why. It's legalized bribery. It's money in politics. And no one takes, and the Democrats are definitely guilty. You're not going to get me to defend the Democrat on that. But the Republicans, if you haven't noticed, the Republican Party is 99% bought and sold by billionaires and corporations.
Not Donald Trump.
Okay, all right. Okay, you're right. So I know we want to go to Q&A. We're running a little short on time. But you mentioned women before, and that you don't like to mention women's issues. But I just did want to ask one quick question on that, since you did mention it. You say if we took away women's right to vote, we'd never have to worry about another Democratic president. Actually, you said Democrat president. It's kind of a pipe dream. It's a personal fantasy of mine.
Yeah.
So you would like to take women's right to vote away from them, including your own?
I think it was a rash experiment, and I'm not sure it worked out, this women's suffrage business.
Another hyperbole, or like the nukes you kind of mean it?
Oh no, I told her that.
Oh, you mean it? Okay. Once again, we have achieved clarity. All the women in the room, she would like to take your right to vote away.
Don't worry, I'm giving up my vote too, but we all give it up. You vote per household.
All right. Okay, clarity. I love the clarity. Okay. I didn't put words in your mouth there, right?
Next question.
All right, great. So, for the next question.
World, because America has been an amazing force for good in the world. One of the things that annoys me about immigrants coming in, the ones who immediately have grievances and start attacking America. Look, I'm annoyed enough when a 10th generation American attacks our country. You just got here, getting off the gangplank and attacking us. But that happens quite a bit, and it is immigrants piggybacking on the black experience in America. Immigrants, you're not black. The reason Americans are sensitive to race is because of slavery, because of Jim Crow. Yes, this country does owe something to black Americans. I'm not sure Democrats did it the right way. We don't owe anything to the rest of the world. Most of what we've done is rush around and save you from earthquakes and tsunamis and warlords, Nazis. Well, we've been such a force for good in the world. I wouldn't expect, don't expect Mexico to come save you when you have your next tsunami. Don't expect, China to go in and stop the next Hitler. It's going to be 1,000 years of darkness if this country stops being this country and we just become a second Mexico, which is where we're headed right now.
All right, there's so much to say, but I just going to give you one more Ann Coulter quote here, and then we'll take another question. In 1960, whites were 90% of the country. The Census Bureau recently estimated that whites already account for less than 2/3 of the population and will be a minority by 2050. Other estimates put that day much sooner. One may assume the new majority will not be such compassionate overlords as the white majority has been.
Yes, I can illustrate.
Said the woman who just said, oh yeah, we might owe blacks a couple of things, but the whites have been such sensitive overlords of minorities in this country.
You did the in other words again. I said nothing of the sort. I'm saying black Americans, people who are descended from slaves and from people who were discriminated.
I know, but in that quote, I know that sounds better in the original German, right?
Jim Crow. Oh, that's so original. Oh, I've never heard that before. Descendants of people who were enslaved, who were victims of Jim Crow, incidentally enforced by the Democrats.
Instead of wasting that time repeating your point, I was asking about that quote,
well, if you're going to
where you said that whites were such benevolent overlords.
Got the question. But your in other words here is wasting a lot of time. No, it wasn't in other words. You said something about black people. I was talking about how the country is changing from immigrants we are bringing in who are piggybacking on the black experience. Will the new immigrants, overlords, be as compassionate as the white overlords are? I think it was illustrated when you read that quote. When you got to, whites will be a minority, I heard the audience cheer. Can you imagine an audience of white people cheering? Oh, it's going to be all white. No, you cannot. Those are your new audience.